General Orders 306. Use of force. Force is among the gravest powers entrusted to a police officer. It can protect the innocent. It can stop violence. It can bring a resisting person under lawful control. Used without justification or restraint, it destroys the trust from which police authority is drawn. The badge makes you a guardian. It also makes you a servant of the public. Never remember one and forget the other. Philosophy. Respect the dignity of every person. Honor the sanctity of every human life. These principles guide the department's training, leadership, and use of force. The department exists to protect citizens, their rights, their property, and public safety. When force is used without justification or restraint, the damage reaches beyond the person against whom it was used. It weakens public trust, and police authority comes from the public. Objective reasonableness. The legal standard is objective reasonableness. Your decision will be judged from the perspective of a reasonable officer at the scene. The judgment is based on the facts and circumstances as they existed when you acted. It is not based on information discovered later. It is not based on what someone learns after reviewing the incident in safety and silence. The question is whether a reasonable officer, possessing the information you possessed at that moment, could have believed the action was lawful. You must judge two things. First, was there a need to use force? Second, was the amount of force reasonably related to that need? The existence of resistance does not automatically justify every force option. The amount must fit the need. Judge the need. Judge the threat. Use only the force the circumstances reasonably require. Factors you must consider. Every incident is different, but the central factors include the severity of the crime, whether the person presents an immediate threat to officers or others, whether the person is actively resisting arrest, whether the person is attempting to evade arrest by flight. Reasonable force, when warranted, is permitted by law. Using reasonable force may also be an affirmative duty when force is needed to perform your duties or protect a person from assault. But unreasonable force is contrary to law. It may expose the city to civil liability. It may expose you to civil liability. It may expose you to criminal prosecution. It may result in departmental discipline. No written order can predict every confrontation. You are entrusted with discretion. That does not mean you may act on impulse. It means you must reason beneath pressure. When you or another person faces an imminent threat of serious bodily injury or death, deadly force may be warranted. Discretion is not freedom from rules. It is the burden of making a reasonable decision when no rule can describe every moment. Identifying yourself and giving warning. When feasible, identify yourself as a peace officer before using force. When feasible, state your intention to use force. When the person does not already understand what is occurring, make your lawful intention clear. Tell the person that they are being detained, arrested, or searched. The warning must be feasible. There will be situations in which an immediate threat leaves no safe time for explanation. But when time exists, use it. A clear warning may prevent the force that would otherwise follow. When time permits, identify yourself. State your lawful purpose, and warn before using force. Understanding resistance. Resistance or non-responsiveness does not always come from a deliberate decision to fight the police. A person may be suffering from a medical condition, a developmental condition, a language barrier, a drug reaction, an emotional crisis, or another condition affecting the person's ability to understand or comply. Observe what is happening. Do not treat confusion as aggression merely because it is inconvenient. Do not engage in unreasonable conduct that creates or unnecessarily increases the need to use force. You cannot always prevent a confrontation, but you must not carelessly manufacture one. Before calling it defiance, consider whether the person can understand, respond, and comply. Duty to intervene. Every department employee has a duty to intervene when observing a law enforcement officer or department employee using force that violates departmental policy and training concerning objective reasonableness. This duty applies, regardless of rank, regardless of position, to sworn employees and to non-sworn employees. As a sworn officer, take appropriate action to stop or prevent the violation when you can do so. Then immediately report the violation in writing to a supervisor. Loyalty does not require silence in the presence of unlawful or unreasonable force. Silence protects no honorable officer. It only permits the violation to continue. Non-sworn employees should not physically intervene in a police action. They satisfy their duty by immediately reporting the violation to a supervisor. When the initial report was verbal, they must follow it with written notice. You are never ordered to stand idle while another person violates the limits of lawful force. Intervene appropriately, then report it in writing. Definitions. Words control policy. Know what they mean before you are forced to explain what you did. Force. Force is compulsion or restraint used against a person for one of three purposes: to compel compliance with an officer's direction, to overcome resistance during an arrest or detention, or to defend yourself or another person from aggressive conduct that threatens physical injury or death. Use of force. A use of force is any physical or mechanical intervention used by an officer to defend, control, overpower, restrain, or overcome the resistance of another person. Objectively reasonable force. Objectively reasonable force is force that a reasonable officer at the scene would consider appropriate. The decision is evaluated using the circumstances known to the officer when the force was used. The decision to use force must be reasonable. The level of force must also be reasonable. Necessary force. Necessary force is the minimum amount of force required to accomplish a lawful objective when no reasonably effective alternative appears to exist. Necessary does not mean harmless. It means no more than reasonably required to complete the lawful objective. Excessive force. Excessive force is more force than is objectively reasonable to accomplish the lawful objective. The objective may be lawful, while the amount of force is not. A lawful arrest does not excuse unlawful force. Less lethal force. Less lethal force is force that is not intended and is not likely to cause death or serious bodily injury. The term is less lethal, not harmless. Any force option can cause injury, and a less lethal option may become deadly force when applied improperly. Deadly force. Deadly force is force reasonably likely to cause death or serious bodily injury. It also includes force that creates a substantial risk of death or serious bodily injury. A weapon does not have to be called deadly for its use to become deadly force. The manner of application matters. Control. Control means physically managing a person so that a lawful objective can be completed. Chokehold. A chokehold is an intentional technique or use of a device that applies pressure to the throat or trachea and restricts the airway or ability to breathe. A chokehold is considered deadly force. Neck restraining technique. A neck restraint technique intentionally applies pressure to the side of the neck. It restricts vascular blood flow and is likely to cause unconsciousness. A neck restraint technique is considered deadly force. Hogtie restraint. A hogtie restraint is any restraint in which the wrists are secured behind the back, the ankles are bound together, and the restrained wrists and ankles are then tied together. Hogtie restraints are prohibited. De-escalation. De-escalation means taking action to stabilize a situation and reduce the immediacy of a threat. The purpose is to create more time, more options, more distance, and access to more resources. The goal is voluntary compliance and a reduction in the intensity of a potentially violent confrontation. De-escalation attempts to reduce the need to use force. Distraction techniques. A distraction technique redirects a person's focus away from resistive or dangerous behavior so the officer can gain control. A distraction technique may include a controlled strike, a pressure point, or a leverage technique. The technique should target an area with the greatest reasonable likelihood of being effective and should not be intended to cause serious bodily injury. When one distraction technique is ineffective, consider a different distraction technique or another reasonable force option. Do not repeat an ineffective technique without thought merely because it was the first one chosen. Leg restraints. Leg restraints must be departmentally issued, purchased by the officer, or issued through an authorized specialized unit. The device must appear on the department's authorized list maintained by the Use of Force Coordinator. The restraint and its holder must be approved by order of the Chief of Police. Do not carry or use an unapproved restraint because it appears useful. Convenience is not authorization. Drone. A drone is an unmanned aircraft, watercraft, ground vehicle, or robotic device. It may be controlled remotely by a human operator, or it may operate autonomously through software or programming. An autonomous drone operates without direct control through computer software or other programming. Tactical violation. A tactical violation occurs when the force itself was objectively reasonable, but the officer failed to follow required and trained tactics, techniques, or procedures. The failure must lack justification from extenuating circumstances or create unnecessary risk. This distinction matters. The force may be lawful and within the proper level, but the officer may still have created unnecessary danger by ignoring training. For example, officers pursue a stolen vehicle. They fail to conduct the required high-risk stop. They later use lawful force to remove the person from the vehicle. The force may be reasonable, but the failure to use the trained high-risk procedure may have unnecessarily endangered officers or citizens. Reasonable force does not erase unreasonable tactics. Enhanced training opportunity. An enhanced training opportunity identifies a deficiency in an otherwise acceptable use of force. The force was justified, objectively reasonable, and within policy. But the officer may have applied a trained technique ineffectively, or another available option may have produced a better result. This is not called remedial training. It is not disciplinary action. Possible training may include individual training with academy personnel, training with a specialized unit possessing relevant expertise, a roll call debrief to identify possible improvement, or working with a field training officer. A lawful action can still teach a lesson. The fact that force was justified does not mean no better option existed. Other high-risk situation. An other high-risk situation is a law enforcement event with a higher likelihood of violence or of encountering a person armed with a deadly weapon. Examples include serving warrants, barricaded persons, persons with weapons, building searches, known gang members, known felons, and an uncooperative person preventing the officer from determining whether the person is armed. De-escalation. There are moments when an officer must take control of a violent or resisting person. You may need to make an arrest. You may need to protect yourself. You may need to protect another officer. You may need to protect a member of the public from imminent harm. Not every violent confrontation can be de-escalated. Policy does not demand that you negotiate with an immediate deadly threat while innocent people are being harmed. But officers have a duty to use de-escalation whenever it is possible and appropriate. Your words, position, distance, patience, tactics, and judgment may change the direction of an encounter. De-escalation can increase safety, reduce liability, improve police service, reduce the need for force, or create an opportunity to use a lower level of force. Treat people with dignity and respect. Procedural justice is not weakness. It is one of the foundations of lawful authority. De-escalation options. When possible and appropriate before using force, consider advisements, warnings, verbal persuasion, departmental decision-making models, empathy, additional time, additional resources, tactical repositioning, distance, cover, and alternatives to a higher level of force. You may withdraw to a more secure tactical position. You may create greater distance. That distance may allow you to consider or deploy more force options. Withdrawal to a stronger position is not surrender. Distance can be a tool. Time can be a tool. Cover can be a tool. But you must not perform your duties in a manner that unduly jeopardizes your own safety or the safety of others. De-escalation is used when conditions allow it. It is not a command to abandon sound tactics in the face of immediate danger. Supervisors are expected to respond promptly when a potentially violent confrontation exists. As the patrol officer, communicate the circumstances and request supervision or additional resources when needed. When time and safety permit, slow the moment down. Distance creates options. Options may prevent force. Force options. Your force must be based on the actions of the person and the totality of the circumstances. You may not use objectively unreasonable force while pursuing a lawful objective. The department's use of force training materials are incorporated into this policy. The general order gives the framework. Your training teaches the approved methods. Subject behavior. A person may be compliant or non-compliant. Non-compliance may take several forms. Know what you are actually facing. Do not raise the level of resistance merely because the person frustrates you. Compliant. A compliant person acknowledges lawful directions or orders and offers no passive resistance, active resistance, aggressive resistance, or aggravated aggressive resistance. Handcuffing a compliant arrested person for transport may still be a low-level use of control, but compliance does not justify pain used as punishment. Passive noncompliance. A passively non-compliant person refuses to comply, but is not physically hindering the officer in a threatening or harmful manner. Examples include standing still and refusing to move after a lawful direction, falling limp, refusing to use their own power to move. Reasonable options may include low-level force. Civil protests are also governed by the applicable provisions of General Order 328.06. Passive resistance refuses movement. It does not attack. Active resistance. An actively resistant person refuses commands and physically hinders or threatens to physically hinder the arrest or detention process. The resistance is not directed toward injuring the officer. Examples include walking away, running away, pulling away, breaking the officer's grip, or lying on the person's arms to prevent control. Reasonable force options may include low-level and intermediate force. The proper option depends on the complete circumstances. Active resistance fights the control, not necessarily the officer. Aggressive resistance. An aggressively resistant person displays an intention to harm the officer, themselves, or another person. The person is also attempting to prevent officers from placing them into custody or control. Aggressive resistance may include taking a fighting stance, punching, kicking, striking, attacking with a weapon, or other actions creating an imminent threat of physical harm. Reasonable options may include low-level and intermediate force, but prolonged aggressive resistance may develop into aggravated aggressive resistance. As the danger rises, greater force options may become necessary. Aggressive resistance brings an imminent threat of physical harm. Aggravated aggressive resistance. Aggravated aggressive resistance consists of actions likely to cause death or serious bodily harm to the officer or another person. It may include the threat or potential use of a deadly weapon or extreme physical force. Policy states that any force option is permissible in response to aggravated aggressive resistance, but this does not erase the remaining standards. The option chosen must still be objectively reasonable, and deadly force may only be used under the deadly force requirements of this order. Aggravated aggression threatens death or serious bodily injury. The danger is greater, but reason still governs the response. Injury or complaint of injury. Whenever force results in injury or a complaint of injury, monitor the person. Render first aid to the best of your training and ability. Immediately summon medical attention. Do not decide that the complaint is false merely because you cannot see an injury. Call for medical assistance. Continue monitoring. The duty to control a person does not end the duty to care for that person. After force, control the scene, but care for the person. Monitor, render aid, and summon medical attention. Levels of force. The policy divides force into low-level force, intermediate force, and deadly force. These are not mechanical steps that must always be climbed one at a time. The circumstances determine what is reasonable, but you must understand the nature of the option you choose. Low-level force. Low-level force is force or control that is neither intended nor likely to cause injury. Examples include handcuffing a compliant person for transportation or placing a person prone during a high-risk vehicle stop. Low-level force includes officer presence, verbal commands, weaponless strategies, and control strategies. Officer presence. Officer presence is recognition of lawful authority through a uniform, a marked police vehicle, police markings, a police logo, a badge, police credentials, or verbal identification. Officer presence does not include physical force. Verbal commands. Verbal commands direct or require compliance. Examples include drop the weapon, get on the ground, stop running, show me your hands. Clear commands should tell the person what you need them to do. When feasible, give the person an opportunity to comply. Low-level weaponless strategies. These are open-hand control techniques designed to gain compliance. Examples include handcuffing, or a takedown that causes no injury. Use the technique as trained. Control is the objective. Punishment is never the objective. Low-level control strategies. Control strategies use a departmentally approved control device. Examples include handcuffs, or another approved restraint device. Approval and training matter. A restraint is not authorized merely because it is commercially available. Intermediate force. Intermediate force has the potential to cause injury or substantial pain. It is greater than low-level force. Intermediate force includes weaponless and weapon strategies. Intermediate weaponless strategies. These are empty hand techniques such as strikes, a takedown that causes injury, pressure points, or other approved techniques capable of causing injury or substantial pain. Intermediate weapon strategies. These use departmentally approved control devices such as impact weapons, chemical agents, or conducted electrical weapons. Carry only approved devices. Use only those for which you are trained, and use them only when authorized by policy and circumstances. Deadly force. Deadly force is force reasonably likely to cause death or serious bodily injury, or force that creates a substantial risk of either. Deadly force includes firing a firearm in the direction of another person. It may also include an improperly applied, less lethal option. Examples include an intentional baton strike to the head, the neck, the sternum, the spine, the groin, or the kidneys. It may include firing a 40mm or less lethal shotgun in a way that violates policy or training. It may include firing a firearm at a vehicle, building, or structure when another person is believed to be inside. It includes applying a chokehold or neck restraint technique. The name of the weapon does not control the classification. The manner in which you use it does. A less lethal tool can become deadly force when you apply it in a deadly manner. When deadly force may be used, you may use deadly force against another person only when the force is objectively reasonable and immediately necessary. Deadly force may be used to protect yourself or another person from what you reasonably believe is an imminent threat of death or serious bodily injury. It may also be used to prevent the escape of a person when you have probable cause to believe the person committed a violent felony, and the person would present an imminent threat to human life if escape occurred. An active shooter fleeing while retaining access to additional victims is one example. A violent felony alone does not automatically authorize deadly force against a fleeing person. There must also be an imminent threat to human life if escape occurs. When feasible, warn before using deadly force. For example, police, stop, or I will shoot. The warning is required when feasible. It is not required when delay would expose someone to an immediate deadly threat. Deadly force requires an imminent threat to life, not anger, not punishment, and not escape alone. Use of force restrictions. Written policy cannot predict every event. Any deviation from these restrictions will be rigorously examined according to the specific circumstances. Know the rules before an emergency tests them. Verbal threats. Do not use deadly force solely in response to a verbal threat of serious bodily harm or death. Words alone do not authorize deadly force. Evaluate means, ability, opportunity, conduct, and the complete circumstances. Warning shots. Do not fire a warning shot. Do not fire to compel an arrest. Do not fire a warning shot to prevent the escape of a suspect or prisoner. A fired round must go somewhere. The law does not allow you to send it into uncertainty as a warning. There are no warning shots. Every round must have lawful purpose and accountable direction. Firing at a moving vehicle. Do not fire any weapon, including a less lethal weapon, into a moving vehicle or at its occupants unless one of two circumstances exists. First, an occupant is using deadly force against you or another person by means other than the vehicle. Or second, the driver is clearly using the vehicle as a means to inflict serious bodily injury or death upon another person. The fact that a vehicle is fleeing does not by itself authorize gunfire. The fact that a vehicle is moving toward your general area does not relieve you of the need to evaluate the actual threat. Do not place yourself in the vehicle's path. Do not deliberately place yourself in the path of a moving vehicle in a manner likely to create the need to use deadly force. When a confrontation with a moving vehicle occurs, move out of its path. Your body is not a roadblock. Do not create a deadly force decision that safer positioning could have prevented. Move from the vehicle's path. Do not manufacture the need to shoot by standing where the vehicle must strike you. Firing into buildings. Do not fire into a building where a suspect is concealed. The only exception is when there is no doubt concerning the suspect's location, and a deadly assault or intended deadly assault is being directed from that location toward you or another person. Uncertainty is not a target. Know where the threat is. Know what lies around and beyond it. Shooting animals. Officers may use deadly force against animals only if persons are in imminent danger of death or serious bodily injury. Chokeholds and neck restraints. Chokeholds and neck restraint techniques are prohibited unless the use of deadly force is authorized. These techniques are classified as deadly force. Do not apply them as ordinary control techniques. Hogtie restraint. Hogtie restraint is prohibited. There is no routine exception. Do not use it. Switching from a firearm to another strategy. When you have a firearm drawn or displayed, secure it before. Drawing or using a conducted electrical weapon. Using a baton, using pepper spray, beginning a weaponless strategy, or moving into physical control requiring contact with the person. Do not enter a hands-on struggle while holding an unsecured firearm when you have a reasonable opportunity to secure it. Tactical units may have exceptions under approved unit procedures, advanced training, and exigent circumstances that would otherwise create a major tactical disadvantage or a risk of serious bodily injury or death. Prior tactical unit experience and advanced training may be considered as a mitigating factor during disciplinary review. As a rookie patrol officer, do not assume a tactical unit exception applies to you. Follow your training. When a person's sudden actions give you no reasonable opportunity to secure your weapon before making physical contact, secure the firearm as soon as it is safe. Before going hands-on or changing weapons, secure the firearm, unless the threat gives you no safe opportunity. Then secure it as soon as safety permits. Firearms as impact weapons. Do not use a firearm to strike a person. A firearm is not a club. Control Tactics Manual. Additional techniques, procedures, and restrictions are contained in the Fort Worth Police Control Tactics Training Manual. The manual is located on the police portal under Forms and Documents, then Training. This general order does not replace the manual. Policy gives the authority and restrictions. Training governs the approved application. Use of force with drones. Force delivered by a drone is justified only when the force is justified under Chapter 9 of the Texas Penal Code. The use of deadly force by an autonomous drone is prohibited. An autonomous system may not independently deliver deadly force. Elementary school students. While performing security duties on school property or at a school-sponsored or school-related activity, do not restrain, use a chemical agent, or use an electrical weapon on a student enrolled in 5th grade or below. The exception is when the student presents a serious risk of harm to the student or another person. The child's age matters. The setting matters. The risk must be serious. 5th grade or below, no restraint, chemical agent, or electronic weapon unless the child presents a serious risk of harm. Control devices. Carry only departmentally approved electrical weapons, chemical agents, and batons. You must complete the required training division course before carrying them. Control device procedures and reporting rules apply both on duty and off-duty. Use control devices only when authorized by the General Orders, the Control Tactics Training Manual, and, when applicable, the TASER Training Guidelines. Training is part of authorization. A device in your possession does not mean it is proper for every resistance. Batons. A standard-issue baton is furnished to an officer who has qualified and has not previously been issued one. After the initial issue, a standard baton is replaced only when it is lost, damaged, or found defective through no fault of the officer. A baton other than the standard issue baton must be purchased at the officer's own expense. The department will not replace a personally purchased baton if it is lost or damaged. Training division personnel inspect batons during annual requalification. Retention end caps designed to prevent the baton from slipping from the hand are authorized. An end cap is not authorized when it contains a pointed protrusion, a sharpened protrusion, or a window-breaking feature that may cause additional injury during closed-mode strikes. Carry an approved baton. Qualify with it. Keep it inspected. Do not add a feature designed to cause unauthorized injury. Chemical agents. Carry and use only department-issued chemical agents and delivery systems. Use them according to departmental training. After exposure, seek medical assistance when the person may have a pre-existing medical condition, including pregnancy. Appears under the influence of a narcotic or controlled substance. Appears non-responsive. Appears ill. Or has difficulty breathing. When circumstances allow, begin decontamination by rinsing the exposed area with clean water. Do not watch a person struggle to breathe and call it ordinary discomfort. Observe. Respond. Call medical personnel when required. Issued chemical agents are inspected by training division personnel during annual requalification. After chemical exposure, watch the person, not merely the effect. Medical distress requires medical help. Electrical weapon. Only department-issued electrical weapons are authorized. Personally owned electrical weapons are prohibited. Drawing or displaying the electrical weapons. Draw or display an electrical weapon only when performing the department-approved spark test, or when you can articulate a belief that its possible use complies with the General Orders, Control Tactics Training Manual, and Taser Training Guidelines. Horseplay with the electrical weapons is strictly prohibited. A weapon capable of causing pain and injury is not entertainment. When an electrical weapon may be used. An electrical weapon may be used to control an actively resistant person when other tactics have been ineffective or will probably be ineffective, and there is a reasonable expectation that approaching the person within physical contact range would be unsafe. Active resistance alone is part of the analysis. It is not a command to deploy the electrical weapon in every case. Explain why other methods failed or were likely to fail. Explain why entering contact range was unsafe. Active resistance, ineffective alternatives, and unsafe contact range form the policy foundation for electrical weapon use. Carrying the electrical weapon. Carry the electrical weapon in an approved holster on the support or weak side of the body. The separation from the firearm is deliberate. Maintain it. Demonstrations. Electrical weapon demonstrations or presentations are prohibited unless conducted by an electrical weapon instructor with the approval of the training division captain. Electrical weapon probes. Request medical personnel to remove every probe that penetrates the skin, except when exigent circumstances require otherwise. Probes in sensitive tissue may only be removed by medical personnel. Sensitive areas include the head, the face, the genitals, the neck, and the breast. A probe that penetrated the skin is a biohazard. Dispose of it in a sharps container. Use latex gloves when handling a removed probe. When punctured by a used probe, follow the department's exposure procedure. Do not treat the used probe as ordinary debris. It has entered another person's body. Handle it accordingly. Medical evaluation after electrical weapons activation. After an electrical weapon is activated against a person by drive, stun, or probes, request an on-scene medical evaluation by ambulance. When the person receives more than a cumulative 15 seconds of cycling, request transportation to a hospital for evaluation. Count the total activation time. Do not consider each cycle in isolation and ignore the cumulative exposure. Continue monitoring the person. Every activation requires medical evaluation. More than 15 cumulative seconds requires hospital evaluation. High-risk electrical weapons circumstances. Before using the electrical weapon, consider the person's physical condition and surroundings. The electrical effect may not be the only danger. The person may fall from a height into traffic, onto a dangerous surface, or into another hazard. Electrical weapon. Use is prohibited against the following high-risk populations unless exigent circumstances exist or the use is necessary to prevent serious bodily injury or death to the person, the officer, or a third party, a frail or infirm person, an elderly person, a person with low body mass, a pregnant person, a small child, a person in water because of the risk of drowning. The exception is serious. The danger must justify the additional risk. Do not see only the target. See the age, condition, water, height, traffic, and place where the body will fall. Supervisor response to electrical weapon activation. A supervisor or commander must respond to every electrical weapon activation in drive stun mode or cartridge mode. Notify supervision promptly. Do not delay the notification because the person appears uninjured. Electrical weapons documentation. Document every use involving an ARC display, drive stun mode, or cartridge mode. Document it in the offense or incident report. Flag the report as use of force. An accidental cartridge discharge requires an inter-office correspondence, or IOC, explaining the incident to your immediate supervisor. The supervisor signs and forwards it to the taser coordinator. Drawing the electrical weapons from the holster in preparation for possible use is not considered a use of force itself. The exceptions to electrical weapons use documentation are a spark test, an official training division class, or an official training division demonstration. For an activation against a person, the supervisor downloads the electrical weapons firing record and attaches it to the administrative report. ARC display, drive stun, or cartridge deployment. Notify, report, and flag it as use of force. Electrical weapons inspection, repair, and data. Training division personnel inspect electrical weapons and cartridges during qualification. Do not repair or alter an electrical weapon yourself. Only approved training division staff may perform repairs or alterations. Immediately report a malfunction or needed repair to the training division coordinator. All data stored within the electrical weapon is subject to departmental download. The training division maintains the list of officers qualified to carry and use the electrical weapon, and the list of officers issued electrical weapon equipment.
40mm launcher.
The 40mm launcher is governed by the department's 40mm launcher manual on the Fort Worth Police Department portal. Do not treat this general order as complete authorization or instruction for that system. Know the manual. Follow the training. Use of deadly force. Deadly force is a last resort. It is authorized when other reasonable means are exhausted or unavailable, and the force is necessary to protect the officer or another person from an immediate threat of death or serious bodily injury. Justification is limited to the facts you knew or reasonably perceived when the incident occurred. You are not judged by facts no reasonable officer could have known, but you are accountable for facts you did know and dangers you reasonably should have perceived. Protecting the public. No matter how serious the crime, your basic responsibility remains the protection of the public. Except to preserve life or prevent serious bodily injury, do not fire under circumstances that expose other officers, bystanders, or hostages to death or possible injury. Gunfire under those circumstances is not justified unless failing to fire would create a substantially greater and more immediate threat of death or serious bodily injury. A lawful target does not erase the people behind the target. Know what lies around the threat. Know what lies beyond the threat. The presence of danger does not permit you to ignore innocent life. Deadly force is used to preserve life. Never destroy a greater number of innocent lives in the name of saving one. Reporting use of force incidents. Force that is not reported cannot be properly evaluated. Your report is part of the use of force. It records what happened after the physical struggle has ended. Do not treat it as an afterthought. Incidents that must be reported as use of force. Report and identify an incident as use of force when it results in injury to any person, includes a strike, includes the grounding or takedown of a person, or includes the use of any weapon to control a person. This applies whether you are on duty or off duty when acting as an officer. Each officer's responsibility. Every officer who uses reportable force must describe that officer's own actions in a separate supplement. The high-risk stop firearm pointing exception is explained later. Do not allow another officer's report to speak for your force. You know why you acted. You know what you perceived. Write it. At a minimum, the report must describe the circumstances surrounding the encounter, the resistance encountered, the type or types of force used, which officers used force, the justification for the force, the de-escalation attempts used before force, and the de-escalation attempts used throughout the incident. Do not merely write, subject resisted and force was used. Describe the conduct, describe the commands, describe the threat, describe the resistance, describe the force, explain why the force was reasonable, circumstances, resistance, force, officer, justification, de-escalation. Incidents that do not require blue team, but still require reporting. A blue team administrative report is not required when a person is grounded or taken down, no injury occurs, and no other force is used. A taser ARC is displayed, or a firearm is intentionally pointed at a person. However, these incidents still require notification to a supervisor, an RMS report, identification of the incident as use of force, and the required details concerning the encounter, resistance, force used, officers involved, justification, and de-escalation. Do not confuse no blue team required with no report required. The administrative form may not be required. The supervisor notification and RMS report are: drawing a firearm from the holster in preparation for possible use is not considered a use of force. Intentionally pointing it at a person is. No blue team does not mean no report. Pointing a firearm, displaying an ARC, or conducting a no-injury takedown still requires supervisor notification and an RMS use of force report. High-risk vehicle stops and other high-risk firearm pointing. For a high-risk vehicle stop under General Order 308.04, or another high-risk situation involving officers pointing firearms, only the sheet officer is required to complete the report describing the firearm pointing use of force. The sheet officer's report must list every Fort Worth officer who pointed a firearm, the people at whom firearms were pointed, and that the officers acted according to established high-risk stop or high-risk situation training. This exception applies to the reporting of firearm pointing. Any additional force must be reported under the normal use of force reporting requirements. For example, when an officer points a firearm and then uses a physical takedown, the takedown must be reported under the ordinary force rules. Drawing a firearm in preparation for possible use remains outside the use of force definition. Pointing it at a person does not. Report deadline. Complete every report describing a use of force before the end of your shift. When force is used while off duty, complete the supplemental report immediately upon returning to work. Do not carry the unwritten report into another day because the shift was difficult. Memory fades. Details disappear, right while the facts remain clear. Before the shift ends, the force report ends. Off duty, complete it immediately when you return. Intermediate force against an animal. When intermediate level force is used against an animal, notify a supervisor. Complete the related RMS report. Identify the incident as use of force against animal. The SWAT section follows its own standard operating procedures for reporting SWAT use of force incidents. What the supervisor will do. Understanding the supervisor's role helps you understand what must be preserved and reported. A supervisor responds to every use of force incident requiring a Blue Team administrative report. The supervisor interviews the person against whom force was used and witnesses. When an interview cannot be completed, the supervisor documents why and provides the available information, so the interview may be completed later. When the person makes a citizen complaint during the review, the complaint is handled under General Order 4.10.04. The supervisor collects and attaches relevant digital media, including body camera video, in-car video, security video, real-time crime center video, photographs of the involved officers, and photographs of the involved persons. When media cannot be attached, the supervisor documents why and provides information so it may be obtained later. Preserve evidence, identify cameras, inform the supervisor of witnesses and possible recordings. Do not assume the supervisor already knows they exist. Blue Team Administrative Report. The supervisor completes the Blue Team administrative report and sends it electronically through the chain of command. The supervisor must initiate Blue Team before the end of the supervisor's shift. The review includes whether de-escalation was attempted, how it was used, and whether it was effective. A separate Blue Team report is generated for each person against whom force was used. If force is used against 3 different people, there will be 3 Blue Team reports using the same RMS report number. A supervisor who personally used intermediate force may not complete the related administrative investigation. Another available supervisor conducts the on-scene investigation. The Blue Team report is then completed by a designated supervisor from the same division as the involved supervisor. As a rookie officer, your duty is cooperation. Provide truthful information. Preserve evidence. Complete your report. Do not coordinate stories. Do not change a fact because it appears unfavorable. Use of force review. Deputy chiefs review use of force reports to determine whether there is a need for a change in departmental procedures, additional officer training, referral to the department psychologist, or another appropriate action. The report is then forwarded to an assistant chief for final review. Incidents qualifying as critical police incidents or meeting the criteria for the Use of Force Review Board are referred for higher review. The Use of Force Coordinator tracks all force reports. Tracking allows the department to examine how force options are being used, whether tactics are effective, whether patterns are developing, and whether criminal tactics are changing. The Use of Force Coordinator also prepares an annual report for executive review. When exigent circumstances require an officer to use a weapon or device that is not on the approved weapons list, the incident is considered for reporting as a critical police incident under General Order 356.00. An emergency may explain why an unapproved device was used. It does not remove the need for serious review. Use of force training. The department's training manual identifies the approved force techniques. Beginning in calendar year 2024, every sworn and reserve officer must qualify annually in department-approved baton training, chemical agent training, conducted electrical weapon training, and open-hand control training. Qualification includes practical and written examinations. When an officer fails to demonstrate the required standard, the officer is scheduled for remedial training with a certified control tactics instructor. The officer is then retested. Failure of the retest is considered neglect of duty. For a regular officer, it may result in termination of employment. For a reserve officer, it may result in disqualification from the reserve program. Firearms qualification is governed by General Order 202.02. Training Division leadership is responsible for developing and providing annual training. Use of force training must include de-escalation instruction intended to avoid force when possible, or create an opportunity to use a lower level of force. The Training Division documents training and certification in the officer's personnel file. Changes in use of force training are reported in writing to Internal Affairs before implementation. Supervisors are responsible for ensuring their officers attend required training. Your responsibility is simpler. Attend, learn, qualify. And remember that yesterday's qualification does not excuse today's careless technique. Authority to carry a weapon comes with the duty to train, qualify, and remain competent. Use of Force Review Board. The Use of Force Review Board may examine force incidents at the request of the Chief of Police, an executive-level commander, or a designee. The board reviews incidents meeting both of the following conditions. There is an alleged use of force policy violation or excessive force under the disciplinary guidelines, and the event is not classified as a critical police incident under General Order 356.00. The board also periodically reviews use of force incidents, statistics, policy, and training. It may seek departmental feedback when appropriate. Purpose of the board. The board exists to protect the sanctity of life, improve officer safety, enhance professionalism, provide liability protection, evaluate objective reasonableness, evaluate compliance with departmental policy, and compare department practices with current best practices. The board is not disciplinary. It does not seek or make disciplinary recommendations. It evaluates the force and the systems surrounding it. Board membership.
The board consists of positions rather than named individuals.
Members include the Use of Force Coordinator, who serves as the non-voting chairperson and secretary, the Operational Command Deputy Chief, the Community Partnership Command Deputy Chief, the Investigative and Support Command Deputy Chief, the Tactical Command Deputy Chief, and the Training Division Captain. The board meets quarterly when directed by the chairperson or within 30 days after notification of an incident requiring review. Members are briefed on board procedures before reviewing incident packets or serving as chair. Board findings. By majority consensus, the board determines whether the force was reasonable within departmental policy and consistent with current best practices. The chairperson directs preparation of the board's conclusion and findings. The findings are returned to the requesting party within 30 days. The Office of the Police Oversight Monitor may designate one or more observers. An oversight designee may monitor the meeting, offer input, and provide a different perspective. The designee is not a voting member. As a patrol officer, you do not control this process, but your conduct, video, statements, tactics, medical response, and written report may become the material the board examines. Write and act as though every decision must later survive honest review, because it may. Rookie Officer Use of Force Review. Remember the foundation. Respect dignity. Protect life. Use objectively reasonable force. Judge the facts known at the time. Consider the severity of the crime. Consider the immediate threat. Consider active resistance. Consider flight. Match the amount of force to the need. Use the minimum force reasonably required when no effective alternative exists. Do not create an unnecessary confrontation. Identify yourself and warn when feasible. Use de-escalation when possible and appropriate. Distance may create time. Time may create options. Options may reduce force. Intervene when another officer uses force that violates policy and training. Report the violation immediately in writing. Know the levels of behavior: compliant, passive noncompliance, active resistance, aggressive resistance, aggravated aggressive resistance. Do not confuse passive refusal with an assault. Do not confuse running away with an attempt to injure you. Do not confuse words alone with a deadly threat. Know the levels of force: low-level force, intermediate force, deadly force. A less lethal option may become deadly force when improperly applied. Deadly force requires an imminent threat of death or serious bodily injury. Preventing escape with deadly force requires both probable cause for a violent felony and an imminent threat to human life if escape occurs. Warn before deadly force when feasible. Never fire a warning shot. Do not fire at a moving vehicle unless the policy exception exists. Move out of the vehicle's path. Do not use a firearm as an impact weapon. Do not use a chokehold or neck restraint unless deadly force is authorized. Never use a hogtie restraint. Secure your firearm before changing to another weapon or going hands-on when you have a reasonable opportunity. Use only approved weapons and control devices. Use them only as trained. 5th grade or below. No restraint, chemical agent, or CEW during school security duties unless the child presents a serious risk of harm. After any force causing injury or a complaint of injury, monitor. Render first aid. Immediately summon medical assistance. After chemical exposure, seek medical help for special medical risks, intoxication, non-responsiveness, illness, or breathing difficulty. Begin clean water decontamination when circumstances allow. For electrical weapons use department-issued equipment only. Carry it on the support side, no horseplay. Use against active resistance only under the policy conditions. Consider falls, traffic, water, age, pregnancy, frailty, and low body mass. Request medical evaluation after activation. More than 15 cumulative seconds requires hospital evaluation. Sensitive area probes are removed only by medical personnel. Treat used probes as biohazards. Notify a supervisor after drive stun or cartridge activation. Document an ARC display, drive stun, and cartridge use. Flag the report as use of force. An accidental cartridge discharge requires an IOC. Report all required force before the end of the shift. Each officer normally writes a separate supplement describing that officer's own force. For firearm pointing during a high-risk stop, the sheet officer reports all officers who pointed firearms. No blue team required does not mean no report required. Tell the truth. Describe the resistance. Describe the threat. Describe the force. Explain the justification. Describe de-escalation before and during the incident. Preserve the video. Identify witnesses. Request medical care. Notify supervision. Complete the report. Force is not proof of authority. It is the burden placed upon authority when words, distance, and lawful control are no longer enough. Use it without hesitation when innocent life truly requires it. Use it without anger. Use it without punishment. Use it without pride. See the person. See the threat. See the hands. See the distance. See the innocent people beyond the threat. Know what you knew when the decision was made. Give clear commands when time permits. Create distance when distance makes the encounter safer. Call for resources when resources can change the outcome. When force becomes necessary, use what is objectively reasonable. No more, no less. When the resistance ends, the justification for force may also end. Then control the person. Monitor their condition. Render aid. Call medical personnel. Notify your supervisor. Preserve the evidence, and write the truth before the shift is over. The public gave you authority so that you could protect life. Never allow the power to use force to make you forget why that power was given. Protect life. Read the threat. Match the force. Stop when the need stops. Give aid. Report the truth.